Welcome in, college football fans. This may be a lot of you's first time seeing me. I'm Bryce Lewis. You've seen my channel before. I do a lot of professional sports content, Falcons and Hawks for Atlanta teams. But I wanted to dive into the college football realm tonight and talk about the most talked about question till noon on Sunday when we know the 4 teams to get into the playoff. And we're going to break it down here. I'm going to give my thoughts on this. If you guys like it, let me know. Maybe you could do more college football content on the channel. If not, that's fine too. Just want to give my thoughts on the playoff. Now that we know that Michigan's in, Washington in, and FSU, I don't think it's a debate. They're undefeated. They're ACC champion. They're in. The question is, who will be the number 4 team in the country to make it into the playoff? Between Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. Those are the 3 teams. And I'm going to break down each team's case for reasons of why they shouldn't get in. And you guys, give me your thoughts in the comments about what you guys think about it. And what do you agree with? What do you not agree with? What do you think should be the process that we see happen on Selection Sunday? So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to talk about Georgia, the first team to go down. They've been the number 1 team for the last few weeks. They've been a top, basically 2 team the entire year. If you look at Georgia, they lost an SEC championship game to a top 8 Alabama team by 3 points. So realistically, that's not a loss that I think first off the bat that the committee is going to be like, that's like they need to take a tone. But the thing is, which I'll get into the arguments with the other 2 teams, is that where does Georgia fit into all this without being a conference champion? So one thing I want to point out first is being a conference champion is to me, based off what the committee has done in the last couple of years, doesn't mean as much as we think. TCU lost, got in. Georgia, when they started this run, lost, got in. Ohio State didn't even play in a conference championship game, got in. We have evidence that a conference championship does not make or break you making the playoff. I don't know if we've had during this era, unless you were the number 4 team and you lost going into that game. If you're above, you drop out. So Georgia has that technically, based off what the committee has done, that does not mean they're out of the picture. That's why they're still in. Your best win this season, if you're Georgia, is a top 10 Missouri team. So listen, I know people may not look at Missouri like that, but they're a top 10 team in the committee's eyes. That's still a really good win. And much as people hate it, it's a good win. And then their second best win is Ole Miss, which I think is 11th in the college football playoff rankings. So you have a top 10 and a top 15 win, top 12 win. So in terms of resume, you can't necessarily sit here and say the Georgia has not played anyone. Your other AP 25 win is Tennessee. So you have 3 25 wins on your schedule. Both Ole Miss and Tennessee, you basically blew out, basically handled those teams. And like I said, your loss is in the extra game. You finish undefeated in your slate. You played an extra game and you lost that extra game. How badly should you be punished for that loss? I said during the game, if Alabama handled Georgia, won by 3 touchdowns, then Georgia's not in it. You just got handled by them. 3-point loss? I don't know. I get people are saying, well, they're the SEC champ, but to me, that makes it seem like that's a conference bias. Well, it's the SEC. If you win a championship, you should get in. But that's more of a bias to me. That's not like, okay, that does like here's the thing. I get that. But like, Alabama's 8th. That would be the biggest jump any team would make in the playoffs to get to the top 4. Which, yes, they did beat the number 1 team in the country, who has won 29 straight games leading up to today. So it's a great win. It's the best win of the season. Alabama got the best win of the season beating Georgia, but it's not like the game was Alabama just destroyed Georgia. It wasn't one of those games. That's why sometimes they always say in these last couple of games, or that conference championship game for these teams, you got to blow your opponent out. You have to smash whoever you play. to really leave an impression on the committee, to let them know we are playing our best football right now, and we are one of the best teams in the country. So for me with Georgia, you pretty much were playing a game where we don't know how much the committee is going to weigh. Brock Bowers hurt. McConkey hurt. You had Ra. He didn't play, I believe, in this game. You also had the offensive lineman get hurt. The committee may look at that and say, well, Alabama beat a Georgia team with a bunch of injuries by 3 points. But no, to be fair, Alabama had injuries too. They lost, Kool-Aid during the game. They had McClellan. He didn't play in this game. They had some injuries. So I'm not even going to try to make it seem like the injury bug should be why Georgia gets in. But, Georgia was not healthy. They weren't playing their best. And that was clear as day when you watched the game. But in that same process, to me, it's not like Georgia lost. If Georgia lost, let's say from the SEC West, let's just say hypothetically Auburn made it, and they were unranked. Or let's say they were like 24th in the country. Then, yeah, if Georgia lost, you lost the 24th team in the country, yeah, okay. I mean, it's not a terrible loss, but, it's a worse loss. Losing to a top 18 by 3 points, I don't know if the committee is going to say they're not deserving of a playoff spot. Losing to a top 18. But I don't know. The thing I've always said about the committee is the committee has always been so muddy with how they do things that you have everybody who makes these lists and makes these decisions on who the fourth team should be are doing this based off their logic. Everybody has their logic of what they think the top teams are. Some do it by deserving, some do it by just eye test, some do it by resume, some do it just by who's playing the best at the right time. Everybody has their own ideal for what determines to be a top 4 team. And so in Georgia's situation, what you're hoping for is that they think you lost to Alabama. I don't think that's good enough to take you out the playoff. Because really the key for that is if Alabama jumps Texas, then Georgia's out. Because now, with Oregon losing, you pretty much are in a situation where if you have Alabama jump Texas, they have the head-to-head on Georgia. So then you have them jump Georgia, and then they get into the playoff. Right? But it all comes down to if they allow Alabama to jump Texas, which we'll get into Alabama. You just came off with the best win of the season from Alabama fans. Best win of the season. I'm a Dogs fan, but listen, y'all win the game. I ain't going to even sit here and trip. Y'all have improved. Milroe has taken leaps and bounds since the beginning of the season. Everything says, from an eye test perspective, Alabama should be in the playoff. But the one thing that could hurt you, and if you've listened to the committee when they've had these interviews, when they do these lists, they have brought head-to-head up a lot. And Alabama lost head-to-head to Texas. Yes, it was early in the season, and that's what a lot of people are going to say. It was early in the season. How can that weigh so much now? But the committee has been like, it weighs a lot. They beat you head-to-head. Because I said this. I said Alabama's situation, what might hurt you is not only did you lose to Texas, you lost to Texas in your house by 10. And they handled you on that last drive where you couldn't get the ball back. That's not something a committee just forgets. So if we switch it to a neutral field, that's not going to, I don't think the committee's going to be moved by that, where they're like, oh yeah, Alabama will definitely beat them now on a neutral field when they couldn't beat them at their place. Because realistically, which I'll get more into Texas isn't playing bad right now. So it's not like Texas is undeserving. But Alabama is a conference champ. If they get in, it would be one of the biggest leaps a team would have ever made in the college football playoff era, I think, from going to 8-4. On the last weekend. They definitely have the eye test. They beat Georgia. They have made a lot of improvement. Best win is Georgia. Second best win is the same second best win Georgia has, which is Ole Miss. Now, I don't know if these small things like them basically, should have probably realistically Alabama fans know you should have lost Auburn. Everybody knows. Like, at the end of the day, everybody, you should have lost Auburn. Auburn was just stupid. We don't know if in the committee's mind that's like, well, this team, yeah, they beat Georgia, but they also almost lost to Auburn. I don't know if that plays a part. They won the game, so you're going to get credit for the win at the end of the day. But, again, the committee has not made it. I mean, I don't know if the committee, will change that. No clues. Remember, I just think that with the committee's uncertainty and the muddiness of how they make decisions on who should be the top 4 teams, I feel like it's just very difficult to sit here and know for sure, because everybody's just going off of the fact, well, they're the SEC champ, they should get in because they're SEC. And I just feel like, that's why some people are actually looking at the fact we may not have an SEC team in the playoff because of that, which would be insane to a lot of people, because I mean the SEC is viewed as the most dominant conference in all of college football. So not to have the SEC champ in there is insane. But maybe that's something the committee is willing to do. We have no idea. We don't, because the committee has not done a good job of giving us a history, a path that tells us should they be in or not. They haven't done a good job of that. So we cannot say that necessarily Alabama should or shouldn't get in. If Alabama gets in, I completely understand it. I'm not going to be mad at all. I completely understand it. It's fair. But at the same time, now going into Texas, if you're Texas, you're like, we beat them. That is your sole argument against Alabama. We beat Alabama. We beat them. You can't take that away from us. You can't devalue that. We beat them at Alabama. We handled them in the fourth quarter. You can't take that away. And the best case scenario for Texas, and I know people ain't gonna talk about it, but Texas probably wishes to God that they played Oklahoma. Because if they were able to get Oklahoma instead of Oklahoma State, Alabama would have a shot. Because now, if you beat the team who beat you, the only loss on Texas' schedule, then what real reason does Alabama have to get in? You beat the team who beat you. Now, I always look at when you beat the team who beat you, it wipes it off. Now that loss is null and void because you beat the team later. So that loss doesn't matter, and you beat everybody else. See what I'm saying? So they if they had Oklahoma and then they were able to beat Oklahoma the way to beat Oklahoma State, if you're Texas, you're getting in because of it, just because of that. But because they play Oklahoma State, a lot of people just view it as like it's not an impressive win. Out of all the teams that are vying for a playoff spot, technically Texas is the most least impressive in their conference championship games. But again, the head-to-head committee has said it. Head-to-head matters, man. That's why they've kept Alabama below Texas the entire rankings. And they have not let them. If the committee puts Alabama above Texas, then you can maybe make the argument that Alabama will get in, and they're in perfect position. But because of the fact that they're behind Texas, we just don't know. When the committee sits down and talk, what means more to us? Them beating Georgia or Texas beating Alabama earlier this year? That's going to be the crucial decision that is going to decide everyone's fate. If they believe that Texas beating Alabama is bigger than Alabama beating Georgia, the Texas will get it. If the committee thinks that Texas beating Alabama is important, but still don't think that their resume is up to Georgia's resume, even without a conference championship, Georgia will get it. If they feel like Alabama's win is bigger than the head-to-head and Alabama beat Texas and Georgia, they'll get in. There's so many avenues, there's so many options, there's so many different things. People were complaining, well, FSU should just not make it because of the quarterback. But the thing is that at the end of the day, they're undefeated in one ACC championship game. How are you going to look at that team in the face and say, even though you did everything that you needed to do to get into the playoff, we're just not going to put you in because we don't like who your quarterback is? Now that's just bias against a position on a team of a team. Technically, you could look at it's impressive that they're winning with a third string. Remember, they lost Jordan Travis. They've won every game since that. It's not like they've lost. Now you could say the offense looked terrible against Louisville, and that's fair. But you can't sit here and tell me that doesn't matter. And then I listed, like I said earlier in this episode, we have the last couple of years we've had teams not in conference championship games or not win conference championship games get into the playoff. Because the committee has showed us in the past, the conference championship game is an extra game. The conference championship game doesn't have as much weight as a regular season game. Because you basically got through your gauntlet of the schedule. So how much are we going to punish you for losing that extra game? And listen, I feel like everybody has a valid opinion on who should get in. That's why I want to hear y'all's opinion. Everyone has a valid opinion on who should get in. Every team has an argument. But the thing is, it's not just about eye tests. It's not a one-game sample to determine who's the best team. It's a full season sample. It's not, just a resume. It's a combination. It's a combination. And when you combine everyone's, who do you think is the fourth best team in the country who deserves to get in? Because the committee has showed us it won't always be the best four. It's the four most deserving. And if you're going off that bias, that's what leaves it so wide open. Listen, I tell people, man, watch those ESPN committee interviews they have with them after every poll. The committee gives you hints about what they consider important and what could make or break a team getting in. And then when we have these discussions that we're having right now, we forget about them. But they always rear up. There are teams that's why last year they were talking about Ohio State had a really good team, a really good, how they played, everything shaped the schedule, and that's why they got in. And people were like, oh, this should matter. Or when TCU lost, they lost in an extra game. Why am I going to punish them for losing that extra game in overtime? like it's not like they got blown out. They lost in a very close game. That doesn't tell me you're undeserving of a playoff spot. And so every school has an argument. Every school that I've mentioned has an argument. It literally is just a matter about who is the most deserving team to make the college football playoff. Because to me, I personally think it's going to be Georgia or Texas. And the only reason why I think that specifically is just because the committee has drilled into my head-to-head matters. And so that just eliminates Alabama. That's why Alabama's been 8th and they've been so low. Or else they would have creeped up a little bit higher to me. To be honest with you. If I'm being completely honest with you. But if the Georgia win means more, then Alabama gets in. And I am completely okay with that. And then Georgia, I just think you've been a top 2 team all year long and you lost a 3-point game to a top 8 team. To them, that's I don't know if that's enough warranting a 5-6 spot drop. And listen, I'll say this for Georgia's sake. If they get in, they're going to be dangerous. Because now you don't have the pressure of the streak. You don't have the pressure. You can play. It's almost like Ohio State when they got in last year. No pressure. We're not even supposed to be here. We can just play ball. And they almost beat Georgia. And now Georgia's in that position. If the committee lets Georgia in there, they're going to be loose. And then you would assume Lad McConkey is going to be more healthy. Bowers, you assume you probably might be a bit rah-rah back. You assume Georgia will get healthy. And you're playing loose. I'm just saying, if Texas gets in, they're a team that they beat Alabama. They've had a good season. Their loss is to a top 15 Oklahoma team. I mean, I have no reason to not believe they can't compete with the top teams in the country. They haven't showed me they can't. They haven't showed me they can't compete with them. They beat Alabama, that beat Georgia, so I technically could see Texas beating Georgia or Texas beating Alabama again. You could say Alabama's better, but Texas still might be able to beat them on a neutral field. We have no idea. And then Georgia's saying, like I said, you've been the best team all year long. Alabama, you made probably the most improvement, I feel like, as a team from week 1 to week 13 in this entire landscape. You have made probably the most improvement as a team. And you are deserving of a playoff spot. But you know the funniest thing about all this is? Next year, none of this is going to matter. These conference championships ain't going to matter. All this ain't going to matter. Because all these teams getting in. So all these questions we have about who should be the book, they all getting in. They all going to get it. So now we just get to see who really going to be the best. It's going to be as simple as that. So I just want to get my thoughts on the playoff situation. Who should be number 4 in the college football playoff? I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on it. If you're all listening to this, please follow me on Twitter at Brycey_2K. Talk to me there, interact with me there about some things. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. If you like this video, want to see me do more college football videos, definitely let me know. It's something maybe we can get into, maybe preview the playoff once it happens, preview games, things like that, and go from there. I don't know if I'm making it a team-centric. I may just make it a college football as a whole-centric thing as well. So, like I said, appreciate you guys for tuning in, giving me be a part of your day. I know this video is getting out kind of late, and I know this video is not going to maybe be as relevant to certain people, whatever, once the playoff comes out, whatever. Just want to get this out and get my thoughts. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And it's your boy, Bryce Lewis, signing out.